it's Shamara here with SWHR Consulting, and today I'm going to do a quick video on how to complete an I-9 from an employer standpoint. So your business is starting and you're trying to figure out, what do I need? What documentations do I need to make sure that I successfully onboard my new employee? And so of course there's quite a lot of other documentation that I will share with you guys later as I do more videos in regards to what other things you would need to collect. But one of the major documents that you need to collect when you are hiring someone is an I-9. So today I'm going to show you how to complete an I-9 and what information you need to collect in order to complete it successfully. So you've hired your person. You have 3 days from the time of hire to complete this I-9 in order to be compliant. So typically when you're filling out an I-9, it always goes to the employee first. So the employee is going to fill out their personal information, which I'm going to show you here today as well. And then once they complete that and sign off on all the information is correct, then it comes to you as the employer to verify their identity. So what an I-9 is, it's utilizing it to verify that this person is authorized to work in the United States. So you want to make sure that they can work in the United States and they have valid identification to show that. So I'm going to show you quickly how to complete an I-9 from the employee standpoint, and then I'm going to show you from the employer standpoint how to complete the I-9 successfully. So let me bring over, there we go. So I'm going to go ahead and start filling out the information as an employee. So I'm going to put some random information here so that we can go through this video. I'll go with Robbins is the last name. First name is Lacey. Middle name or middle initial, if you have any other name. And let's go with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Sunshine. Ooh. Lane. Apartment 2118. And it's in Las Vegas, Nevada. Let's go with zip code 89108. Go with the date of birth of .l@gmail.com. Oops. Phone number 213 or 3231 445 8990. Okay, so I got all of my personal information completed at the top. Now I'm going to select my status in regards to my status in the United States, whether I am a citizen of the United States, a non-citizen, a lawful permanent resident, or an alien authorized to work. Okay, so just for today's purposes, I am going to select a US citizen so that we can move through this faster. But of course, if you are a lawful permanent resident, for example, you would put your USCIS number here. And for a long time, I had to do that for myself because I was originally born in the Caribbean, in Antigua and Barbuda to be exact. And so when we migrated here, I was a lawful permanent resident, and in order for me to work, of course I needed to have that type of identification to do so. And so these are the ways that we would verify that you are qualified to work in the United States. So, and then once I became a citizen, I now select a citizen of the United States. So now that I completed all that information, I'll go ahead and sign my signature. So I'm just gonna type it here. Oh, no, that's not the name. It is Lacey Robbins. There we go. And we're going to sign today's date. So no one else is completing this form for me. So say for example, you may not be able to understand the information that's listed here and you needed someone to help you complete this document, then you would utilize a preparer or a translator that is going to prepare this document for you, and they will fill in this information, signing off that they have done this for you in order to get the form completed. So we're going to skip all of that because it's not required here. And so as I mentioned to you, this is all the employee section. And again, they're telling us, hey, this information that I'm providing to you is accurate. And now as the employer, you're going to verify that information. So everything that I'm sharing with you is of course dummy information. So the content that I'm going to put up on the screen now is just going to show you a completely different name just because again, this is just dummy information, but I wanted to show you from the employee standpoint first before I dive into the employer section. So this is what the employer section would look like. Again, you are verifying that the person's information is correct. And as I mentioned to you, you have 3 business days from the time of the employee's first date of employment to complete this form. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and close this out and let's get back to my document. Okay, so as I mentioned already, it is sample information. So as you can see, whatever documentation that they provide to you, you want to make sure that you are using that in order to complete this section. So you would grab and put their last name, their first name, if they have a middle initial, and then their citizen immigration status. So if you saw on the other document, as I mentioned, it's pretty much labeled 1, 2, 3, and 4. So this person, based on this, shows that they are a citizen. So they put 1. Typically you'll see either a 1 here, or they will actually write out US citizen. So either one is fine, but most times you're probably going to see, or should actually write out US citizen, or here lawful permanent resident, or alien authorized to work. So it's really up to you, but again, you can either put the number or you can type it. You can actually write out the status. Then this person actually presented us with their US passport. So as you can see here, it shows that you can either use a identification in the first list of items, or you can do 2 of lists B or C. So just to kind of give you an idea of what that actually looks like. So with list A, again, it's either or. So if you take any documentation that is in list A, you don't need to fill out anything in list B or C, okay? If you take anything from list B, you have to include an identification from list C. So as I said, if you have list A, you don't need B or C. But if you have B, you need C. And if you have C, you need B. Okay, so anything in list A is a US passport, a permanent resident card, a foreign passport, employment authorization document for a non-immigrant alien. So there's quite a lot of things that are listed in here that you can utilize to verify that they're qualified to work in the United States. And if they give you documentation from either list B or C, those are a driver's license, an ID card, school ID, voter's registration, US military, Coast Guard, driver's license issued by a Canadian government authority, school records. So there's quite a lot of things that you can pick in list B. And then in list C, it's your social security card, your birth certificate, a US citizen ID card, and so forth. So typically what you'll see given to you in terms of documentation is either a passport or a driver's license and a social. So I'm going to show you those two examples today. But as you saw, actually, there's quite a lot of different identification that you can collect from a person that is looking to work with your company. So passport, so you want to label it passport. Issuing authority is the United States of America. You want to actually collect a document number. So you'll collect this number listed here and you'd add it right here. And then you look for the expiration date on the actual document, which is listed here. Okay. And then you'll add that information here. And again, as I mentioned to you before, this is just dummy information, so it's not going to match up exactly. The other way that you can write the information is U.S. passport, U.S. Department of State, of course, the document number, and then the date. So as you can see with the date, it wants you to spell out the month, the date, and the year. So make sure that you are writing out, all the digits required for each section, because again, that can cause either for you to, redo the I-9 because you didn't do the date the way that they wanted you to do it. So please make sure that you are following the instructions and how they want you to fill out the information, because it can become non-valid. Okay. So I like to utilize this way of putting it. So I usually put the U.S. passport. I like to spell out U.S. Department of State versus USA. It just kind of gives you a little bit more information about who authorized it. So I like to put U.S. Department of State. This is why I wanted to show you a variance in the two ways that you can put the information on here. But again, it's up to you. Both ways are correct. Okay, so now we have the ability to just utilize the passport. Like I said, with the passport, you don't need the social or the two forms of ID in B and C. So now I'm going to show you where they did not give you a passport, and now you're going to utilize the information that you need to complete in B and C. So this is where they will either give you a social security card or their driver's license for this section. So the purpose of this training today is that I'm going to show you both driver's license and social as the two forms of identification that they're going to provide to you. Okay, so when you're completing the areas B and C, your driver's license will go here and your social security information will go here. So again, with everything that you're doing, you always want to make sure that this information is accurate, and you're verifying that these documents that they provided to you is not only valid in terms of their identification, because you can see the person right in front of you and you can validate that whoever is presenting the information to you is who they say they are. But then two, you also want to make sure that the documentation is not expired, because if it's expired, then you cannot utilize it. Okay. So for the purposes of this training, we were given a Wisconsin driver's license. So you always want to spell out the state of which the driver's license came. So if it's Nevada, you want to say Nevada driver's license. As you can see here, it says Wisconsin driver's license. Okay. Issuing authority, you always want to say state of Wisconsin or state of Nevada. So that's the issuing authority. And then you want to, of course, put the document number. Again, if this information doesn't match up, guys, but here would be the document number for this driver's license. And then, of course, you want to put the expiration date. And so the expiration date listed here, and write it out exactly how they have it formatted here. And then for the social, you want to make sure that you do spell out social security card. So spell it out in its entirety. And then as far as the issuing authority, you also want to do the same thing. Social Security administration. Okay. And then you put the document number here. Okay. And then, as you know, your social security card does not expire, so there isn't any expiration date that you would place here. Okay. As you can see, there's an X in the list A because, as I mentioned before, we collected list B and list C. So list A is not needed. Okay. Remember, one documentation from list A or one documentation from list B and list C. Okay. So those are the two examples that we, mostly see in terms of identification provided to you to verify their authority to work. So let's talk a little bit about some other forms of identification, right? Here you'll see, they provided us with a student ID and a birth certificate. So again, a student ID or a birth certificate exist in List B and List C. And as I mentioned, then List A does not need to be completed. So the name of the document is student ID. Who provided the ID? Advanced High School. The document number is the student ID number here, and there isn't any expiration date, okay, based on the information that they provided. If they gave us a birth certificate, again, you're going to put birth certificate. Issuing authority, U.S. Department of State, because they are the one that issued this birth certificate. The document number, and there isn't any expiration date on your birth certificate. Okay, so again, this is just another example of what other documentation that they can provide to you. And based on the response from the employee, they stated that they were a citizen. So they put a number 1 there. Or as I mentioned, you can put U.S. citizen there as well. Okay, so now we get into the part of actually, documenting who is the one that collected this information, verified this person's identity, and is signing off that all the information is valid and correct, and it's good to go. So in this section, again, it's a certification section, and this is just, as I mentioned, attesting under penalty of perjury that you have examined the documentation presented in the above named employee, and that, the information was genuine. So you want to make sure, again, that it's valid. It is the person that's sitting in front of you or presented the information to you, so that you're compliant. So the employer first day is what you want to place in this section here. So whenever they start, and you want to put your name here, you want to put your signature of whoever is validating this. Here it's Mary Jane. And then you want to put the title here. So if you are business owner, you can put business owner here. If you happen to be the office manager, you put office manager here. For myself, when I'm completing these, I put HR consultant, because I'm the one that's verifying the information, and I am an HR consultant. Then you want to put your last name here, your first name here, the employer's address here, actually the employer's name. Sorry about that. So you put the employer's name here, their full address here, city and town, their state, and then their zip code. Okay. And remember, as I mentioned, you want to make sure that you are verifying their employment 3 business days from their time of hire. So if they started on Monday, you have until Thursday to complete it. So let's talk a little bit about re-verification of employees. So what this section is, and sometimes employers fill this section out by accident because they may not necessarily know what this section is all about, but this only applies if you are rehiring someone within 3 years of the date that the form was completed, or if the employee has a legal name change. So this is the only time that you will be utilizing this section to complete, okay? So this is not something that you do on a regular. You only do the sections that I mentioned above, okay, which is right here and right here. And this only applies if you're rehiring someone or they have a legal name change. This also applies when the documentation that they provided to you expired. So now you need to re-verify that the information is correct and they presented you with valid identification. So outside of these 2 things that I mentioned, if something becomes expired, so for example, the driver's license become expired, the passport is expired, you want to make sure that you are filling out this section as well. Okay, and you verify that by looking at section 1, okay, which is section 1, right, with the identification they presented. So you look at that section, and then the documentation that they provided you in section 2. So you'd be looking right here. Okay, so you're re-verifying the information in section 1 and in section 2. As you can see, here's just a quick example of the information that you'd be completing or filling out. So you would put their last name, their first name, their middle name, date of rehire here, what type of documentation they provided to you, the number, the expiration date, and then of course the signature of the person who's verifying this information, the date, and then of course their name spelled out here. So I-9 forms always should be maintained separately from all the personnel forms. So it should have its own folder and be kept separate. In terms of retention now, I-9s should be retained for 3 years after the date of hire or 1 year after the date of employment ends. So they have retention times, guys. So you want to make sure that you're keeping record of the things that you need to keep record of so that you can go back through if you need to verify anything or double check information. You know, I recommend that you always keep the identification, take a copy of it, just make sure that it's in its own folder, it's in lock and key, because again, that's personal information. And so you don't want that getting out and possibly being liable for having data, you know, personal data out there or a breach. So again, that's all I have for you guys today. Thank you so much for listening in. Again, my name is Shamara with SWHR Consulting. If you have any questions about how to complete an I-9 or you need some support on completing an I-9, you can always reach out to me at 702-979-2119. Always go to the website at swhrconsulting.com, or you can find us on LinkedIn, Facebook, Instagram. If you want to follow us, do so, because we love to share this information and we love the likes and the thumbs up and the subscription. And if you just wanted to reach out and send an email, you can always email us at info@swhr consulting, and we are here to help. So thank you guys. You have a good one. Bye.